The first time I saw my mother behind bulletproof glass, she still sat with her back straight, spine taut like a soldier awaiting a medal. The orange jumpsuit couldn't dim her poise. Her eyes locked on mine with the same calculating precision she used to weigh chicken breasts for our school lunches. 10 years ago, she pinched the skin around my waist and whispered, "Look at your sister. She understands that beauty requires sacrifice." I had just asked her why she made us weigh ourselves twice each morning. She said the first reading might be wrong, and that love, real love, required accuracy. That day, I knew something inside me broke, but I didn't have the words for it. I thought maybe it was my fault. Maybe I wasn't disciplined enough, small enough, obedient enough. So I tried to become everything she wanted. Now, I sat across from her. No scales between us. No rules about portion sizes or calorie intake. Just silence and two lives built on fear, lies, and a warped vision of love. Behind me, an officer adjusted his belt. Somewhere down the hallway, another prisoner screamed something unintelligible. But here, in this still moment, I looked into the eyes of the woman who used to scream at me for chewing too loud, and I saw nothing. No remorse, no confusion, just control. 10 years ago, she ruled our house like a temple of discipline. Today, she's known to federal investigators as one of the most manipulative abusers they've ever encountered. She thought she was saving us. But what she did instead was almost kill my sister. And the world only found out because I stopped being quiet. My name is Valerie Monroe. I am 27 years old and work as a content strategist for a wellness brand based out of Portland. Most of my job involves researching and editing articles about health, sleep hygiene, or emotional resilience. Ironically, I rarely sleep well, my relationship with food is complicated, and emotional resilience is something I had to build from rubble. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment that feels too quiet some nights. I wear oversized sweaters year-round, not because of the weather, but because loose clothes feel safer. Safer from judgment, safer from memories. I don't own a full-length mirror, and I've never once weighed myself voluntarily since I turned 18. I'm 5'8", long dark hair that I usually twist into a loose braid, pale from years of avoiding the sun. People call me calm. I think what they mean is contained. I observe more than I speak. I listen for tone, for patterns, for subtle cues. I learned early that words can be polished but intention cannot. My older sister, Nina, was always the ideal one. 2 years older, petite, graceful, a trained dancer by the time she was 10. She was my mother's golden child, her masterpiece. I was the afterthought, the academic, the reader, the girl who asked too many questions. Nina followed the rules with terrifying precision. I tried to rewrite them. That difference defined our childhood. Our mother, Camille Monroe, was a former celebrity trainer. The kind of woman who got featured in local fitness magazines for her no-excuses regimens. Blonde, sculpted, always smiling for the cameras. But behind the yoga mat and pastel-colored dumbbells was a woman who measured love in calories and obedience in silence. Camille's obsession with body image wasn't a phase. It was her religion. And we, her daughters, were both altar offerings and disciples. When Nina was 12 and hit 65 pounds, Camille took her shopping for designer crop tops and praised her ribcage like it was art. When I brought home a science trophy, Camille barely glanced at it. "You should put that energy into fixing your diet," she said without looking up from her food scale. That's who we were, 2 sisters raised in a house where the scale had more authority than any adult. I was 8 years old the first time I realized mornings in our home weren't like other people's. The day began with a bathroom lineup, not for showers or brushing teeth, but for the scale. A square, digital device my mother cleaned more often than she cleaned the kitchen. She made us weigh ourselves twice. The first number might be a fluke, she said, but the second never lied. If the second number was higher, that one counted. If it was lower, she accused us of trying to manipulate the results. Nina always went first. She would step on the scale silently, eyes locked forward, breath held, and when she stepped off, she'd look at Camille like a soldier reporting for duty. Camille would write the number in a logbook with different colored pens depending on the day of the week. If Nina's weight stayed the same or dropped, she'd get a small nod of approval. sometimes a smoothie made with almond milk and cinnamon. If it went up, even by half a pound, she lost privileges. No iPad, no ballet class, no music. I went second, and I dreaded it every day. I tried to stay light, tried to skip dinner the night before, but I never managed to please her. Camille would sigh, pinch the soft skin on my stomach, and whisper, "Look at your sister. She understands the price of beauty." She never yelled. That would have been too messy. Instead, she cut with tone, shame so finely honed it didn't even feel like cruelty until much later. We were not allowed cereal, pasta, bread, or fruit juice. Camille called those foods emotional hazards. Every bite had to be earned. I became obsessed with finding hidden food. I'd sneak crackers from the pantry, hide them in my pockets, and lock myself in the bathroom, chewing quietly over the sound of the faucet. I was always hungry, not just physically, but emotionally, starved for warmth, comfort, a hand brushing my hair back without criticism attached. Nina didn't eat secretly. She was far more devoted. At night, she'd do jumping jacks for 2 hours before bed, no music, just the sound of her breath and the floor creaking. At school, she would take bites of food and spit them into napkins, tucking them behind radiators or stuffing them into her bag. The first time I saw her do that, I felt sick. But no one at school said anything. Teachers complimented Nina for being disciplined. Girls asked her what her secrets were. When Nina turned 12 and dropped below 65 pounds, Camille took her to the mall and let her pick out anything she wanted. Designer clothes in size 0. Cropped sweaters, low-rise jeans. "You earned this," Camille said, eyes glowing. When I asked why I couldn't come, Camille said, "Because you don't know what sacrifice means yet." I started trying harder after that. I brought home perfect grades. I mopped the kitchen floor every morning before school. I organized Camille's supplements alphabetically. But none of it mattered. "You could be so pretty," she would say, eyes cold. "If you stopped wasting energy on nonsense." When I told a teacher once that I was hungry all the time, she called Camille. That night, Camille made me eat in front of her while she filmed it on her phone and narrated how dramatic I'd been at school. She sent the video to the teacher and said I was going through a phase. No one ever asked again. I gaslit myself for years, telling myself it wasn't abuse, it was structure. Camille loved us, just in a different way. I didn't truly understand the depth of it until the night I found Nina unconscious in the hallway. I was 13. Nina was 14. She had collapsed just outside the laundry room, her lips pale, her body shaking. I saw the empty pill bottle next to her, Camille's prescription appetite suppressants. My hands shook as I called 911. I tried to remember what the health class video had said about recovery position. I was crying too hard to see straight, but I got her onto her side. When she stirred, I pressed my ear close to her mouth. Her breath was shallow, almost non-existent. She whispered, "I just wanted to lose 5 more pounds before Mom's birthday." In the hospital, when she woke up, the first thing she asked was, "Do I look thinner now?" That moment cracked something inside me that never healed. I lost my sister that day, even though she was still breathing. From then on, I played along. I skipped breakfast. I skipped dinner. I sucked in my stomach when Camille walked by. I smiled at her compliments even when they felt like knives. I didn't want to end up like Nina. But the worst part wasn't the starvation. It was pretending the pain was pride. That was the only way to survive. By the time I turned 15, my father returned from overseas. He was a structural engineer, sent on long-term international projects. When he came back, he looked thinner too, but from exhaustion. Not image control. He saw Nina and me for the first time in years and went completely silent. His silence didn't last long. Within 2 weeks, he filed for full custody. Camille fought it, of course, with perfect tears and flawless arguments. She told the court I had violent tendencies, that Nina needed stability, that we were just dramatic teenagers rebelling against discipline. But our medical records told a different story. The doctors testified to signs of severe malnutrition, electrolyte imbalance, and psychological distress. The judge granted Dad emergency custody of me. Nina, however, told the court she wanted to stay with Camille. She said it calmly, clearly, with the hollow voice of someone who knew no other form of love. I moved out and didn't look back. The first year was rough. I had to relearn how to eat. Meals gave me panic attacks. Looking at a plate of spaghetti felt like staring down a loaded gun. But Dad was patient. He made pasta every Friday night and sat quietly while I ate one noodle at a time. By senior year, I had joined the volleyball team. I liked the sound of my sneakers on the gym floor, the feeling of my muscles doing something other than starving. I was okay. Not perfect, but okay. Then came my 18th birthday. Dad asked gently if I wanted to visit Camille and Nina. He said it might help close a chapter. Part of me agreed. I thought I was strong enough now. I thought I could walk into the lion's den and leave untouched. I wore a loose hoodie, leggings, and sneakers. I braided my hair like when I was a kid. I even brought Nina's favorite lip balm, hoping she'd still like the scent. Camille's house looked the same. Pristine white shutters, lavender in perfect bloom. The door opened, and Nina stood there. My breath caught. She was almost unrecognizable. Her skin was papery thin, her cheeks sharp, her hair brittle. She looked like she had stepped out of a hospital ward. I opened my mouth to say something, but she beat me to it. "Oh my God," she said with a strained laugh. "You've gotten so huge." My heart stopped. Behind her, Camille appeared. "What did you do to yourself?" she hissed, grabbing at the hem of my hoodie. "You were finally getting somewhere, and now look at you. You're disgusting." I turned to leave, heart racing, but Camille blocked the door. "You're not going anywhere until you drink this," she said, pulling out a meal replacement shake. I recognized the brand. Camille had used it for years. But the label was discolored, the seal broken. "It's 200 calories. You need to get back on track right now." When I refused, she lunged forward. "You used to care about your body," she snapped. "Don't make me force you." She called Nina. "Hold her arms." Nina moved forward robotically, gripping my wrists. Camille tried to pry my mouth open, forcing the shake against my lips. The smell hit me first. It was rancid, chunky, clearly expired. I gagged and twisted, spilling the shake down my shirt. Camille screamed, "You're ruining everything." I broke free, ran to the bathroom, and locked the door. I was sobbing and shaking. My phone buzzed. I called Dad. I told him to come, now, and call the police. Outside, Camille pounded on the door. "You're choosing ugliness. You're choosing failure," she screamed. "You're spitting on everything I taught you." I curled up on the floor. I vomited twice. When the police arrived, they took one look at Nina's skeletal body and called for paramedics. They took both of us to the hospital. Camille screamed about her parental rights the whole time, shouting that she was being persecuted for trying to save her daughters. I lay on the gurney, staring at the ceiling tiles, my chest heaving, and knew in that moment something irreversible had just begun. The war had come to the surface, and I was finally ready to fight. The hospital was supposed to be a place of safety, but Camille turned it into another battlefield. The moment we arrived, she launched her campaign. She cried in the waiting room, gave out laminated cards with Nina's photo and a short story about her brave fight against an eating disorder. She told nurses and doctors that I was the unstable one, that I had a history of threats, emotional breakdowns, and abandonment. Within hours, I noticed the shift in how staff looked at me. Conversations slowed when I entered the room. A social worker named Kara pulled me aside and asked why I hadn't been in touch with my sister for 4 years. I tried to explain the custody arrangement, the years of separation, the fear, but her pen never stopped moving across her notepad. Camille claimed she had text messages from me. Violent ones. I remembered them. I was 13, raw with pain, after Nina's overdose. I had written things like "I hate you" and "I wish you were gone." Camille printed them out and handed them to Kara like evidence. Every mistake I had made as a teenager was now weaponized. One nurse whispered to another as she passed by, "That's the sister. The one with anger issues." Camille had even called my old volleyball coach, telling him I was going through a mental breakdown and needed an intervention. He left me a voicemail suggesting family therapy. Even my university placed me on temporary academic probation after anonymous reports were filed questioning my emotional stability. Camille's network was wide and fast. But she didn't stop there. She knew I might still try to reach Nina. What she didn't know was that Nina and I had once shared an old email account, back when we were kids and wrote stories together. I took a chance and logged in. The password still worked. In the drafts folder, a message waited. I know you're trying to help. Mom says you're sick, but I remember what you did when I took those pills. You saved me. She's making me take more now. Different pills. Says they're vitamins. But I feel worse every day. Please don't give up. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. Nina was reaching out, trapped inside Camille's web but still trying to escape. I began typing a reply, explaining everything, Dad's lawyer, the court filings, our plan, but I didn't finish. The account logged me out. The password no longer worked. Camille had found it. A few hours later, Dad's lawyer called. Camille had filed an emergency motion, accusing me of cyberstalking, violating the no-contact order, and manipulating a vulnerable patient. She wanted the restraining order extended and criminal charges filed. The hearing was set for the next morning. We had almost no time. I needed character witnesses, but everyone Camille hadn't turned, she had poisoned with misinformation. My old friends said they'd been warned about me. My professors said they'd received complaints. Camille had built a complete narrative, and she delivered it flawlessly. I was the troubled daughter, the manipulative sibling, the jealous outcast. In desperation, I called my high school chemistry teacher, Mr. Sandler. He had retired the year before and moved to the coast. He remembered me. He said he always had suspicions about my home life, that my quiet eyes had told him more than my words ever could. He agreed to write a letter to the court, but even he warned it might not be enough. She's had years to build this story, he said. You've had days. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with Dad, going over what little we had, Anne's testimony about Camille's childhood, expired supplement labels, Nina's draft email, a few photos of Camille slipping money to someone in a hospital hallway. It felt thin. I felt powerless. Then my phone rang. A blocked number. I almost didn't answer, but something in me said yes. A young man's voice, hesitant, nervous. Is this Nina's sister? Yes. Who is this? My name's Jacob. I'm a night nurse on her floor. I need to talk to you. We met at an all-night diner near the hospital. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, hands twitching around his coffee. He told me he'd been watching Camille for weeks. She insisted on being present for every medication. She brought her own shakes, said they were doctor-approved. She crushed pills into Nina's drinks. Told staff they were vitamins. Jacob had taken photos. He had one of the pill crushed into applesauce. Another of Camille's purse open with unlabeled pill bottles inside. He even managed to take one pill home for testing. Your sister's declining, he said. Those aren't vitamins. Some of those compounds were banned 5 years ago. They cause cardiac issues, especially in someone already malnourished. He couldn't testify. His job would be at risk. But he gave me the documentation. Your mom's planning to move her. He added. Says it's a clinic in Arizona, but I looked it up. The address is just dirt. There's no facility there. Camille was trying to make Nina disappear. I ran out of the diner, phone to my ear, calling Dad's lawyer. We didn't have legal grounds to use Jacob's evidence in court. It was collected without hospital authorization, but it was something. Something Camille hadn't anticipated. She had poisoned my reputation, sabotaged my future, and painted herself as the victim. But she had underestimated the one thing she couldn't fully control. Nina. Because Nina had been collecting evidence too. The emergency hearing began at 8 in the morning, hours earlier than scheduled. The court had fast-tracked it after receiving a packet of evidence from the hospital's social worker, Kara. Dad and I arrived just after sunrise, exhausted but alert. Camille was already there, surrounded by her usual circle. 3 women from her Pilates class, the reporter from her interview, even the coach she had manipulated into testifying against me. They stood around her like she was the star witness in a reality drama about misunderstood mothers. She clutched a tissue, dabbing at dry eyes with rehearsed grace. Her lawyer, polished and confident, opened with a clear narrative, my supposed instability, the broken restraining order, the history of aggression. He presented the email login as cyberstalking, the volleyball pictures as evidence of obsession with food, the out-of-context texts from when I was 13 as indicators of long-term volatility. It looked bad. Judge Monroe, a woman in her early 60s with sharp eyes and a reputation for impartiality, nodded as she read the documents. When it was our turn, Dad's lawyer stood slowly, every motion deliberate. He began not with my defense but with Nina's condition. He outlined her vitals, the weight loss, the conflicting intake forms Camille had signed. He handed over the photographic evidence from Kara, the footage of Camille adding powder to Nina's feeding tube. But the judge frowned. These images, she said, are they authenticated? Have they been validated by hospital security? Before Dad's lawyer could answer, the courtroom doors swung open. Kara entered, her hair messy, eyes wide. She held a folder in one hand and her phone in the other. Your Honor, she said, I have urgent information. Judge Monroe motioned her forward. Kara placed the folder on the bench. These are medical reports from the last 72 hours. Nina has developed refeeding syndrome. Her heart is unstable. Her blood work shows irregular toxins. The medical team believes someone is interfering with her nutrition plan. Camille's lawyer objected. This is unverified. This woman has shown bias. The judge snapped, sit down. Then Kara held up her phone. I have security footage from the night before last. It shows Mrs. Monroe opening her daughter's feeding port and pouring an unknown substance inside. This was after visiting hours. She was not authorized. The courtroom went silent. I turned to look at Camille. Her face had lost its color. She stood, pointing at me. She made this up. She's framing me. I'm the only one who cares if Nina lives. Judge Monroe banged her gavel. Enough. Bailiff, detain Mrs. Monroe pending investigation for medical tampering and child endangerment. As the officer approached, Camille bolted. She shoved her lawyer's briefcase off the table, scattering papers everywhere. Her friends gasped. The coach stepped aside. She reached the exit before a second bailiff tackled her and dragged her back inside in handcuffs. You don't understand, she screamed. She'll get fat again. I'm saving her. The judge turned to me. Miss Monroe, you accessed the email account illegally. That is not in dispute. But your intent, based on evidence presented, appears to be protective. I'm dismissing the restraining order and recommending the district attorney drop criminal charges. You are not to contact your mother again, is that understood? I nodded. My throat ached from holding in tears. As for custody of Nina Monroe, she continued, I'm granting emergency guardianship to Mr. Monroe, effective immediately. Child Protective Services will provide oversight. That night, I sat in the hospital room beside Nina. She had not woken up fully, but the machines around her beeped steadily. A nurse told us the concoction Camille had administered contained banned stimulants, expired supplements, and diuretics that had dangerously lowered Nina's potassium. She was alive, but it would be weeks before anyone could say for sure what long-term damage had been done. When she finally opened her eyes the next morning, she looked around the room in confusion. Her first words were barely audible. Is Mom coming? My heart broke. I leaned in and took her hand. No, she's gone. You're safe now. She blinked. Did I gain weight? Dad stepped forward and said softly, you didn't do anything wrong. You don't need to earn our love. Nina closed her eyes again. For the first time in years, she didn't flinch when someone touched her. Camille Monroe was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison with no possibility of contact with Nina until she turned 25. And even then only if Nina chose to initiate it. The courtroom was packed during the sentencing, but we didn't attend. Dad said she had already taken enough of our time. Instead, we spent the day with Nina in her recovery facility, playing board games she barely remembered how to enjoy. The center was a specialized unit for severe eating disorders. Strict visiting hours, no outside food, mandatory therapy. At first, Nina hated it. She cried during group. She refused to eat more than a few bites. She exercised in secret, but slowly, something changed. Aunt Anne began visiting monthly, sharing her own story of recovery. She brought old photos and journals, not to re-traumatize but to prove that survival was possible. Nina started asking questions, real questions, not about calories, but about feelings, about memories she had blocked for years. One day she asked if she had always looked that sick. I told her the truth. That we both had, but she was never just a body to me. She was my sister. And I had missed her long before she disappeared behind Bones. I went back to school eventually. The university lifted my probation once the truth came out. Some professors apologized. Some never mentioned it again. It didn't matter. I wasn't there to be understood anymore. I was there to rebuild. Dad sold the house and downsized, using the funds to pay for Nina's treatment. I took a part-time job and sent what I could. Aunt Anne held a fundraiser through her church. Even Madison, the girl Camille had once manipulated into spying, donated anonymously. Nina's cheeks slowly filled out. Her hair regained some shine. She began painting again. The staff said progress was never linear, but she was responding. One evening, during a quiet therapy session, Nina looked at me and said, "I knew the pills were making me sick. But at least when I took them, she looked at me. She paid attention." That sentence stayed with me. It wasn't about thinness. It was about love. Conditional love. The kind Camille gave in teaspoons and ripped away in gallons. We didn't get our childhood back. No one does. But we were learning to live forward. Months later, when Nina laughed at a joke without flinching, I realized we had already won the most important battle. Not against Camille, but against the voice she planted inside us. The one that said our worth could be measured, counted, and reduced. I used to believe love had a number, that it lived on a scale or in the space between ribs. But I know better now. Real love doesn't weigh anything. It just stays.